Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome back, everybody, to another training event here at WPStudio. This is day 3 of our adventure into the rabbit hole that is the Pods plugin. Pods plugin definitely makes it one of the easier ways of extending WordPress, adding more functionality, really without having to dive into too much code, as you saw from Tuesday and Wednesday's sessions. But we're going to dive in even deeper today. So we're going to come back to the fourth way of displaying the content using both the template, and then I'll show you a fifth way with WPStudio to do that if we have time. So we'll come back to these pods that we created on Tuesday and Wednesday. But what I do want to point out is many of you build sites for clients, or you build sites for yourself, and you get a client who says, you know what, we have several different authors who write for our website, or maybe we have a bunch of contributors who contribute to the nonprofit news feed that happens. And so it would be nice if, rather than having them fill out information every single time when they submit it, let's automatically pull information from their profile. And so let's take a look at this. This is just a completely unstyled, bare bones look at the Hello World blog post. And so we've got the comments. Sure, it does tell you who the author is, but there are plugins out there that will build this entire, kind of author box below here, and it will do all sorts of stuff. But it really is a plugin that is unnecessary if you are comfortable with doing a little bit of styling yourself. And you can automate the whole process. So let me talk about where we're coming from. So if we take a look at this area, so our users, I went ahead earlier today and created another fake user who's going to be a contributor. We'll be able to switch back and forth and see what's going on. Now, like any WordPress user account, there are a number of fields that already come with WordPress. It's everything from their first name, their last name, their nickname. Sure, we've got an email and a website field, and then we've got some biographical information. But in today's social-focused world, we don't have anything about here for them to put their Twitter handle, their Instagram feed, their LinkedIn account, depending on what type of website or blog post you're doing. So Pods takes care of that for you. So not only over the next 10 minutes, not only am I going to show you how we can add additional fields, but we're going to look at how we can put it on the front end and use those fields without having to know too much. So we're going to come down to our Pods admin down here in the lower left and click Add New. And like we started to do yesterday when we extended the Posts area, we're going to go ahead and extend Users. See, Pods allows us to connect to any of the current post types that exist on WordPress. So we're going to say we're going to add a new field, a new bunch of fields to the user's profile. So let's go ahead and jump over here. Now, because users is not a traditional post type, which is going to have front end and rewriting of the permalinks and all these other things, all you see is manage fields and the REST API. Because when we extend the user profile, we are only adding additional fields. So let's go ahead and put Twitter name, and we can go ahead and leave that as the text. Maybe we can put something, just the name, leave off the @sign. This way, if people are looking at that to fill it in, we're giving a little bit of instructions. Now, you can go through and fill out all sorts of things. Maybe you actually want street addresses. Maybe you want to put drop-down boxes of which group they're part of, or where they work, or what they write about, or maybe their interests. Whatever you want to do in terms of fields. I'm going to just leave this as is. We're going to use one field because that's all we really need to do for me to demonstrate the next part of this. How do we get this information out of the database and onto the website. Now, what we're going to do here is, in order for us to have information, I'm going to go over here to our users, and let's go ahead and go to Bob the contributor, and notice how now I have a Twitter name. Again, no styling, no nothing. It's simply just adding additional fields. So his name is Bob. Make sure you get it right. Okay, so we've updated his Twitter name. We can also go, just so you see that it'll pull the correct item. We're going to go ahead and add. Oh no, I'm not that one. Got to make sure I use my actual Twitter handle. Okay, so now both of our users have our Twitter handle. Now, just as a side note, a little rabbit trail. This is why the admin columns is so awesome if you are trying to build sites for clients, because then you can customize the back end. When they come in here and they say, hey, we want to be able to manage all our users. Great. Well, let's give them columns that actually work well. So we're going to jump over here and, oh, there's the Twitter name. Twitter handle. So we can begin adding fields, and let's say we don't need to know. Let's leave them all. So we're going to save this. So now we can go back in, view the viewer screen, and all of a sudden now we have the Twitter handle right there, pulling out anything that we want for our custom fields. Okay, so we've now got two different Twitter handles, and we need a way to pull that stuff out. Now, in order for us to pull this stuff out, I am going to simply pull over the theme. Don't freak out with all this code. This is a theme template inside the theme, inside the loop. And I want you, if you're trying to do the same type of thing that I'm going to demonstrate here in just a moment, you're wanting to look for something on your theme template, whether it's the post, it's the index page, wherever your theme handles their templates to display the content, you're looking for something that would display the content. So that would be the content, the actual core of the content. And when we want to add something after it, we can simply just, place our cursor in the template file of the theme, and we can go to town adding whatever we want. So what are we going to add? We are going to use a function in WordPress that's called get the author meta. So get the author meta actually says we want to look at whoever the author is of this content. So it's going to be able to figure out that, okay, we're going to get the author of this content, and basically it's pulling in all the values or all the fields that are on the user profile. So let's go back to pod so you know where I'm pulling this word from, or this handle from. We go to the users. We're looking for this one right here. This is the ID of the field that we've saved. So I want to get the Twitter name of the author. So let's add a little bit more because we're going to actually echo this out right into that place. But we want to wrap this around some information because we want to put it in a box. So what I'm going to do is just add a little bit of the same type of HTML we did yesterday. I'm going to just quick put a little style of a padding, 25 pixels, margin 25 pixels. Let's put a width of 400 pixels, and then a border so you can see the difference. All right, so we've now, and we're going to go ahead and we got to make sure that we're going to keep the PHP opening, and let's close the div here. Okay, so what I've just done, again, we've added in a div that is wrapping around our echoing the Twitter name. But because we want to do a little bit more, we're going to echo out something else. I'm going to echo out, if you liked this blog post, you may want to follow the author at okay. So what I've now just done, let me drag this over here so you can see it easily in one line. Bear with me 1 second. I'm trying to resize this window. This window doesn't like resizing right now. There we are. Okay, so if you like this, we're going to let me get rid of that. There we go. Now we got it in one line. So we've just echoed out the text, and then we're attaching this. Now, it's not going to link to it. We can always add that later. But let's save this template, and hopefully I didn't mess anything up, because now when you look at this, you're going to, hey, if you like this blog post, you may want to follow blah, blah, blah. Now, we could wrap this around as in an actual link. So basically, you can just then put an anchor tag, wrap it around, get the author meta twice, both in the URL and not. So why is this helpful? It's because what if we changed the author of this blog post? Or let's say Bob now contributes a blog post. So let's go change this, and we're going to have to actually look at the screen options to pull up the author so we can switch. We're going to switch this to Bob Bobertson. We update. Let's go view the post, because it's getting the author meta. It's one of the easiest ways that you can start putting unique information based on different users' profiles. Okay. If you have not been around if you've not been around a lot of our trainings, we have this inside joke that it's time to go get the duct tape, because we're about to do a fire hose of information that we may need duct tape to hold our brains in. And what we're about ready to do is something I've never shown you before in any of this training. But it is a really useful thing to know how to control pods. All right, so let me step back and paint the picture for you. So let's go back to, let's say, our staff. I think, did we have? No, let's go to our managers. I'm trying to find the one that had a number of fields. Oh, was it locations? Okay, yeah. See, locations has store address, store website, store phone. It's all in the more fields. So we can change this more fields if we want, but I'm going to show you something else. I'm going to show you something called pods group. If all you want to do is change the name here, you can look at the handout. I believe it's in page 6, the middle of page 6. I've given you the example code that you can put into your themes functions.php file to change this name. But what we're going to do is something a little bit more. Pods group adds allows us to, rather than default echo out all the fields in here, we can choose the type of fields that we are going to show. So what I'm going to need to do is bring up our, bear with me, I got to bring up the functions.php file of the theme that we're using. Basically, there's nothing else going on here, so I'm just, everything we're going to do here is going to happen after our enqueuing of the script. Okay. Now, there is a hook in pods, and a hook is a location in the code that is simply waiting for other developers or other users to insert their own pieces of code. It's great to think about it as simply you've got Tupperware dishes scattered all throughout your WordPress code, and a hook, an action hook, is simply one of those Tupperware containers that has been placed there by the developer, knowing that in this location somebody may want to put something that will do something or show something or display something. It makes WordPress so flexible. So in order to access that, we have to add an action. So you may have seen add action before. Add action has two parts. The first part is the actual name of the hook, and that's the pods meta groups. And then we have the name of our function. And so we're going to say customize location meta box. Now we can also add priorities, and this makes sure it loads after certain things or before certain things. But that's not as important for today's webinar. So anytime you want to create a function, PHP is really simple because it operates like a dictionary definition. Anytime you see the word function, we are basically providing a dictionary definition of what is going to happen when this function is used. And this function is used here, and it's being placed into this Tupperware container, which is built and left behind by the pods plugin, pods meta groups. So it allows us to control how these meta fields will show up. Now there's two other things. This is just a slight technical thing that deals with PHP. PHP has things called variables. Variables store data or store any type of thing. We can store, anything in a variable. A lot of times you'll see something like you'll see a $sign and then the word of the variable. Well, global variables are not to be used without careful understanding. The reason why is a variable only exists inside its created function, or the function that defines or adds things to that variable. Meaning we can't just pick and choose it and say there's a variable over in this plugin and we're going to just go ahead and use it. That's not how variables work. If we want to grab a variable that exists something else, we have to pass it into the function. All right, so this may be getting a little more technical. Let's press on, and I'm going to show you. All we're doing is we have to pass in, we have to pass in the type, which relates to the type of pods, and we have to pass in the variable name, which relates to the name of the pod that we're using. For this one, our location. So we're going to use something called pods group add. And the pods group add has three parts, and I'm just going to type them out. So first, we want to find the pod, then we want to find the pod label, and then we want the let's call it title instead. That's better. And then we have pod fields. Okay, so let me define what each three of these things are. The pod is this custom post type, or whether it's the users, whether it is location, managers, news, anything that was created with pods or extended with pods is defined here. So because I want to make sure I know exactly what the actual name, we're looking for location. That is the name of the pod. All right, bear with me 1 second. Okay, bear with here. Let's add that here. Location. The pod title is what will show up here. Currently, by default, it always says more fields. So let's call this one our restaurant. Let's call this one a location details, because we're inside the location. All right, so perfect. Now what you'll see is this will change to location details. The next item is a listing of all the fields separated by commas. Now, how do we get this? Sure, if we remembered what the names of each one of these fields, we can do that. But you can always go back to the edit the pod, go to the locations, and we can see our fields here. So in order for us to do this, we're going to simply, let me put it down here. I'll move this over. there'll be a little wonkiness as we move things around on the screen. So we simply store address, comma, store website, comma, and it's off the, let me move this over for store phone. Store phone. And we're done. So what's now being done is, instead of it's Pods simply dumping out the information directly on here. Now, the only thing you'll see change is more fields. So I'm going to save this. I'm saving the functions, and we refresh, and notice how it now says location details. So we may think, oh, we went to all that trouble just to change this. Well, actually, what we now have the power is to choose when and where something is displayed. So I'm going to do two things. Let's just say we're going to remove the store address. So now my pods group location will not display the store address. So, okay, so everybody following so far? All right, so if we're following so far, we're going to now, bear with me one second. So, we're going to do a little conditional logic. A lot of people ask me, okay, so I've been customizing my WordPress website. I've been doing all these things. I feel comfortable with CSS. I feel comfortable with HTML. I feel, what's my next thing I should learn? I tend to always tell people one of the most beneficial things you can learn is conditional logic. WordPress has tons of that, whether you're using simple widget logic for choosing when and where a widget is shown. You can look that up. And Marianne, I'm going to answer the question, why have it if you're not going to display it? Because we're going to use this functionality to all of a sudden wrap this whole thing in conditional logic, because we have two different users. See? We have users. We have a contributor who is not allowed to publish, and then we have an administrator who could. So what if we have certain fields that we are creating that we only want the administrator to be able to fill in, or the person who is actually publishing? So if you were simply using pods, you would have to, basically anybody who would control that would be able to see that. Now there's another way that you can go into pods and do that, but this I think is a much easier way to handle things. So what we're going to first do is, see this one? If, because we're in PHP, we're going to say if current user can administrator. So now we've wrapped this so that the store website and phone should only show up if they're an administrator. If current user can contributor. So that's another thing that we could do. We're going to add, I'm going to just simply copy and paste this whole thing. And we're going to add in store address. Store address. Need to add that. Okay, so let's see if I break something. So here we are. We are the, oh, I did break something. Line 29. Line 29. Okay, so I have a semicolon that isn't working. All right, let me... it's really weird when it says line 29 when there's actually nothing there. Let's do this. Else if current user can contributor oh, I know what I'll do. See what I'm going to do? I'm adding this action. I'm removing it from both of these because basically all I need is the function defined different times based on the user. But I think no. Why is 18? Oh, second. Oh, yep, there we are. Huh. Thank you for that. Okay, so take a look at this. I am the administrator logged in. I see everything. Notice how, because now I put the store address at the end of my list, it now shows up third. Let's go use an awesome plugin called User Switching, free add-on, where I can switch to Bob. Okay, I switched to Bob. Bob's going to come over to adding new location, and look at this. Bob can only see the store address. He can submit it for review. Using the conditional logic, so, Bob can say, great store on Main Street. And the address is going to be 123 Main Street, any town, any state, USA. All right, so we submit that for review. Great, so my contributor has created this post. They have started filling the stuff out, submitted it for review. I'm going to switch back to my admin. Now I am going to take over as the admin, and look, I can see what they've done, and now I can add the additional fields. It all comes back to conditional logic on which group gets to see what fields you want to add in. So Pod's group add is even more powerful than just, quote, renaming the more fields. Because if all you wanted to do was rename the more fields, sure, we could come back over here, edit the pod, and we can spend time in the locations area to do things in the field to say, all right, I'm going to go to the advanced area, and now let's restrict this by role. So which ones do you want? So we can go through this whole thing, but it's not going to rename the field. It's not going to reorder it. It's not going to do anything like this. It's simply going to just show or hide. You can do it this way, but I like the ability to have absolute control when, where, how. So that's just one way. So there's really, multiple ways that you could pull this concept off. So Pod's group add is extremely powerful for this. All right. So what we now need to do is I'm going to go back to the templates, and I know we're kind of jumping around, but there's an important part of the templates that we need to know about. And so what we're going to do here is we're going to come over here to our managers. We're going to leave this. The reason why I want to do this is notice how there's a manager title. Let's create a new manager, but we're going to leave the title off. Muffins, Muffin Man. Does not have a title. Okay, so with Muffin Man not having a title, we could have a problem. Actually, we could have a problem with our template. Why? Because if we go to our templates and let's call this our manager template. So in our manager template, we're going to select our pod that we want to use so that it will auto-populate all these items. Here's our manager name and manager title that we're going to be using as a field. So let's just go ahead and say manager, or let's H2, manager name. And we're going to use the magic tag, and it's going to auto-complete on the manager name. Great. So now we have that, and let's add an H4 under here, and we're going to do manager title. You're going to see why we want to change things. H4. Okay, so here's our little, and let me zoom in just so you can see what I did. Make it a little easier. So we got a manager name, manager title, which means every single time it tries to show content, it's going to put this text in. So if we publish this, and let's go back to our manager post type, and we're going to assign this as a default template. So we're going to enable the template. We're going to assign the manager template. We'll go ahead and put it after the content. We're just making life easy here. So let's go take a look at our managers, and let's take a look at our first one that we know should work. Okay, so here we are, manager name, Bob Albertson, manager title, head honcho. But where our problem is, we come back over here and we take a look at the manager of Muffin. We have manager title, but there's nothing filled out. So why do we even have this? It makes it look incomplete. So there are some very helpful tools, kind of short codes that we can put into our template. So let me close this out, and I'm going to leave this Muffin Man here so we can refresh. So let's go back to our templates, and it operates like a shortcode. It has the same type of a bracket of a shortcode. I'm going to zoom in. Whoa, too much. Can everybody see this? Okay, there are actually several different shortcodes that they're special tags that can be used here. One of them is called each. Each. And you'll see it show up in blue here in the template. So each allows us to go through the loop. So basically, if we have a relationship field where we have multiple selected things, so let's say you have 3 managers assigned to the same restaurant, well, maybe you have allowed one of those fields to have multiple values. Now we can use the each to cycle through all of them, so that, let's say we had manager name, and so what we'd be doing, let's say we have 3 different managers. So we would put each, and then we'd say manager name. So each time we have a manager name, we're going to do an H2 manager name, so that it would actually be treated as manager name Bob. Next line, manager name Mary. This each is part of pods. This is not you can only use these type of things inside a pods function or pods template. But this, if we didn't have this, what it would look like would be this. If we didn't have the each, it would say manager name array. And then that would be actually what it would look like on the front end. And when that happens, then we'd have to go in and write a function, like a helper function for this, to spit out each one of the items individually. But using the each is a great solution that handles this. Now, so each is very helpful if you have multiple values being stored in the same field. The next one is an if statement. If, and then we manager title, if there is a value in the manager title, we will show this. So let me update this, because this will fix our issue that we had before. So we wrap in if, the name of the field, and all that's asking, is there a value? Well, there's no value, So therefore, the manager title goes away and doesn't display. It only displays if there is a value. So when we work in the templates, we can do all sorts of items of cycling through the things and using the if to check and see whether or not something has been filled out or not. This is also a great way. Let's say you have a checkbox on your post type that's waiting for you to check it that says now it's available, the news is available for release. Let's say you have an embargo on your blog post and it won't go live until you actually check the box, but it's still published because you're publishing it, you're waiting, and now you want it to really go live. You are set to go. Yes, there is a list of these. There's only 4 different types of templates. You can go over to the pods area, and I'll paste this directly into the chat room. And it talks about the each if, else if, once, and before and after. So that's before and after the loop occurs. But most people are going to find their use in the each one and the if one. The others are a little less used. At least that's what I've found in the work I've been doing. So this makes the pods template also extremely powerful, because now we can start doing some conditional checking before it has to publish. And we haven't had to really write any core functions that would extract the string, explode all the array items, list them as individual items, and then, echo out the array in a proper format or return items. All those type of things can be easily handled in the template. All right. So we quickly covered what pods can do for the user profile. We've covered what the pods can do here in the templates. We need to talk about another way that pods can be used to display content. Now, you can go through and do it in the core code and do everything that you need. We're not going to go through that because that is a completely different course of dealing with what's called the pods function. And the pods function allows us to write queries and do other things inside and selecting items to be extracted. So one of the things we've done here at WPStudio is kind of built something, kind of taken the best of different things, combined it into a tool, and it's called Loop Studio. This not only builds your loop, but it allows us to display items. So with Loop Studio, I can come in here and basically either create a shortcode or create a template file that I can copy and paste into my theme, and I can do a number of things. So first off, I'm looking at here, I can take a look at my layout. So I've got a test template here. You can see a bunch of these template tags. Now, what are these template tags? These are the ways default WordPress stores, these are the field values, default WordPress stores the title of your blog post, the content, the permalink, the link to that individual post, the post thumbnail or featured image, whether it is the tag, the name of the author, the time it was published, any of the additional meta fields. But there is another one right here called Get Post Meta. Get Post Meta allows you to say, okay, if we're on the blog post for, let's just say this one, for Mary Marison, it's going to get the ID based on the location of the page, whoever's visiting that. And we can pull the field name, and we can basically echo the field name out into a system. So why is this powerful? I'm going to go ahead in and just grab a simple excerpt, which is going to simply check and see if there's a post thumbnail, add a link that goes to the title, and it's just going to use the excerpt, and we've got an excerpt length. So I'm going to save this. I'm just using a default template that's here. So we can go to Shortcode Creator, in which case, oh, I need to update this. Okay, we'll use this one. So we're going to use the template. The reason why this is important, because now I'm going to go grab the post, my news, my pages. I don't know, let's also do the staff and locations. Let's grab them all. Basically, it's going to grab the title and the content out of each one of these. I can then go and say how many do I want to use. Let's do 6. And let's go ahead and order by random. So I'm just going to pull a bunch of stuff. Very simple. And because it's going to create a shortcode, great. I could copy the shortcode and go put that on any page. Or I can come over here and get the code that will be copied into a template file. Okay, so what is a template file? Again, that's another story, another training class. But what we're going to do here is I am going to simply grab, and we're going to play around in here. I'm taking the regular content here. The reason what I'm going to do here is everything inside the loop is occurring at this point. See, this is all loop information, because I'm actually going all the way here. So basically what I've just done is I've copied and pasted what WPStudio did, and it's basically inside the article tag, and it's going to fetch all this stuff. It's going to publish them. And again, it's pulling things from pods things. It's pulling things from any other area, so that now when we come in and take a look at the content, it's basically now overriding what we would see, and it's now just created 6 posts, even though we're on that page. Because instead of using the template that's only going to show that one, basically I've overridden it with my own loop and query and display. So there's other ways that we can choose to display items, choose to move things around, and pull things out of the database. So part of today's webinar was, and yesterday's and Tuesday's, was to show you there's 4, 5, 6 different ways. There's even more that we can use pods to extend WordPress, to add things to the database, and then, because pods is basically either adding new custom post types or adding fields to existing post types, how do we extract that stuff out? So, let me see. Before I forget, if you are watching the YouTube replay, you'll need to email me at benjamin@wpstudio.com if you want the handout. YouTube started getting funky on allowing just direct download links in information about the videos. So you'll just have to email me. And you'll only know that because you're watching the video. Okay, so enough of that. And the other thing is, I'm still working on a solution, a code solution for this issue. The manager that we got rid of the title. Until I can get that out for you all, I'm going to recommend that we don't make any custom post types that removes the title. There's just too much hassle with that. And the rest. Sure. Yeah, we do have time for the rest. But it is, I'm only going to briefly touch on it, because if you've never used the WordPress REST API, and I'm going to pull up a little page here for you guys, 1 second. It is the REST API website. Now, I don't believe I'm blocking it on the current site we're using. I tend to block the REST API for anybody who doesn't have access. Because the REST API is so open, I can pull pretty much anything from any site that is not blocking the REST API. In a prior webinar, I showed how we can go to WooCommerce.com and literally pull all sorts of unpublished blog posts that are waiting in draft. And if we're building a website for companies, we don't want that to happen. Okay, so the REST API is a way for us to fetch a URL or visit a URL, and it's going to return structured content. It kind of looks like a PHP array of content. So the big part of it are routes and endpoints. Routes and endpoints are specific URLs that deal with all the posts. So for example, I'm going to come over here, just show you how to do this. Global parameters. If we were to go in here and let me find posts. So basically, you can attach this to the end of anybody's website, and you will get a return of information. See how it has this? Now, if I went to 42, that's going to look for the ID 42. So if I come over here, let's go visit our website. Pro Web List. Let's literally add WP-JSON WP version 2 posts. These are all the posts. How can I see that? Well, buried within here are things like Hello World. Where are my other? I think I only made 1 or 2 posts. Create a news item. It's all in a structured item, so structured database, but I've been able to pull it out. So I can have a function that fetches this information and allows it to be used and displayed on other websites. So another website can use this because this is a JSON file now. And again, if you really want to dive into this, we've actually got several webinars in the library. Just search for JSON in the WPStudio library for all members. And you can actually see the function, how we can filter it through and save it off and use the content that's here. Okay, so the background is, take a look at this. We've got information about our website. So if we go back to our Pro Web List, let's go log in. Let me reset that so it's a little easier. Now, let's say we want our locations to be accessible with the same type of REST API, meaning an outside source is going to be able to, and an inside source, but an outside source mainly is going to be able to use this. So we can come over to Pods Admin, edit Pods. Let's go to Locations, and now we can go over to REST API. All pods or all custom post types created with pods have the REST API turned off. They're not accessible unless you check this box. Now, the REST base is going to take the name of the location. That's the route. So it's using the pod name. If we want to use something else, like let's say store location. Great. Now we can have, well, let's put a dash in there. Store location would be our route, the base. So what would that look like? I'm not going to press enter yet, but here's our website. We're now accessing the REST API. This is one of the base endpoints. So if we replace that base endpoint instead of post with store location, once we hit save pod, it now opens it. Now, at this point, if I check this, I'm passing all that information and I'm allowing all the fields to be used. Now, why is this here? The reason why show all fields is here, each field does have the ability to turn on and off the REST API. So if I don't check this, save this pod, and we can go back to the fields, now I'm going to say, well, what if I don't want the websites to be on the REST API? So I can edit this, go to the REST API, and... oh, I did it the opposite way. Because we didn't check it, these are not checked. We actually have to go to the ones that we want to display and turn it on. Basically, we're turning on the read. Otherwise, if you turn on the write, other people can overwrite your information simply by accessing a URL. So just read. Okay, so now we've made sure the store address and the store phone save pod. Why didn't that let me go? For some reason, my store website... there. I had to... you got to get them to go green. For some reason, it wasn't saving. So now we've saved this. So when we look at this, we should only see store address, store website. We shouldn't see any of the store... sorry, store phone. We should not see store website. So I'm going to now hit enter. Now we've got our store location. We've got the REST API coming out. So if we were to dive into here, again, rather than to make it up, we've got our... interesting. It actually pulled the... okay, here's the title, location. Rendered, here's the store address. And we don't have anything in the phone. See that? Nothing in the phone. But we don't have website. Store address, store phone. Nothing in the website. So, working with pods, I honestly think is one of the best ways to extend WordPress. Because you can go as deep as you want. You can use the future stuff of the REST API. I'm going to put one caveat out there. There are people out in the world that absolutely love Gutenberg, the upcoming editor for WordPress. There are others that don't see it as a valuable addition to WordPress. Was that a tactful way to say it? And so while pods can make meta boxes and fields added into post areas, and yes, with Gutenberg, it's going to change the way it looks, but because there is so much work and support of pods, we will see a solution of these meta boxes being allowed into and accessible from within Gutenberg. At least that's what I am told. So while this whole screen may change, pods still may be a user interface builder for resources. I also know that I believe advanced content fields, advanced custom fields, will also be doing a very similar thing. Of integrating what the new editor may be with the ability to extend things. But now, there is another thing that you can do. When you are creating custom post types, you can actually say, does this custom post type support pods? Sorry, support Gutenberg. This is something I've already contributed the code fix for. And I'm waiting to hear muffins that would allow you at this point in the advanced options additional supports. It was in the additional supports. Well, actually, I put in a thing, supports Gutenberg or not, is a checkbox. Because there is in the core code of creation of a custom post type the ability to not support Gutenberg, so that when somebody goes to your custom created custom post type, even though Gutenberg tries to load on all those things, it's not going to load. It's going to be treated like the traditional WordPress editor. So keep your eye out on that. I do believe creating custom post types is going to be one of the best ways for people to move forward that don't want Gutenberg. But for those who do like Gutenberg, you can still use custom post types, and Gutenberg will become the editor for that. All right, so we do have a hard stop here. I know there were some things in the handout that we didn't cover. For those of you who were joining us for the first time over these 3 days, thanks so much for hanging out with me. I hope that you've enjoyed or found something useful or little nuggets that you can apply to your business or your coding. If you want to see additional types of training that goes in depth, working with things, the ins and outs, the pro tips here and there, and the live training, please let me know. You can always reach out at benjamin@wpstudio.com. So this will be uploaded back into YouTube for the replay. For all you members of WP Studio, you can jump on over to the members library, and it should be available within an hour as well. If you want to find out more about WP Studio membership, all the plugins, the training, and everything else that happens, visit us at WPStudio.com, or you can even just send me an email, benjamin@WPStudio.com, and I can hopefully answer any of your questions about the training and the tools. So I hope you have a great rest of the day. Enjoy the rest of your week, and until next time, have a great day.